The tempered thread. In a river-beside hamlet ringed by bamboo and the faint smoke of morning fires, there lived an old tailor named Rue. His shop was no more than a lean-to of reed and plaster, but within it lay a sanctum of ordered things, folded lengths of cloth arranged by weight and season, a wooden block worn smooth where ages of needles had tapped, and the slow, disciplined breathing of a man who measured moments as precisely as hems. Rue's hands had learned to read fabric the way some men read scripture. He could tell by the grain of a weave whether a garment would warm a winter body or betray it to chills. By the tiny fray along a cuff, he could infer the gait of the wearer. People came to him not only for garments, but for counsel. For in that village, it was believed that a well-stitched robe could steady the spirit as surely as a bandage steadied a wound. One autumn morning, when the river had begun to kiss the reeds with a silver chill, a young scholar arrived. He wore a robe that had been patched more times than chapters in the brittle texts he carried beneath his arm. His brow was furrowed with an inward calculus, a scholar's worry that the ledger of his life did not balance. "I seek a coat that will let me travel without bearing the weight of my doubts," the scholar said. "I study the classics, but my thoughts oscillate like wind through bamboo. Can fabric teach steadiness?" Rue glanced at the scholar's hands, the callus of someone used to writing, and at the robe's uneven mending. "Cloth and thought are siblings," he replied. "Both require tempering. If you stitch in haste, the seams will gape where you least expect it. If you patch only for appearance, the cold will still come through." Over weeks the scholar sat in Rue's doorway, watching the rhythm of the tailor's work. Rue's method was neither ostentatious nor hurried. He would lay the cloth flat, let his fingers feel the temperature of the fibers, and align a seam as if calibrating a musical instrument. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were like the stitches, precise and purposeful. "There is a principle," Rue said one dusk as incense curled from the scholar's cup, "that governs both the loom and the mind. Cold alone hardens. Heat alone erodes. Tempered by moderation, a garment gains flexibility. Tempered by reflection, the mind gains endurance. To live is to stitch opposites together, to reconcile restraint with desire, silence with speech, solitude with company." The scholar, whose life had been a series of dichotomies, ambition and humility, curiosity and fatigue, began to see a pattern. He had thought that wisdom demanded an absence of friction, a staid placidity. Instead, Rue taught him that what looked like contradiction was often a seam waiting to be mended, places where disparate threads met and could be joined to form a stronger whole. One evening, a peculiar commission arrived. A woman from the lowlands brought a shroud of embroidered cloth, heavy with gold and lineage, yet pocked with stains and tears. "This patron robe belonged to my grandmother," she explained. "We have always worn it at ceremonies, but it no longer fits our lives. Can you alter it so that it honors the past without suffocating the present?" Rue considered the fabric as he had considered the river, both changed by rain, both carrying the sediment of many seasons. He suggested unpicking certain seams and resuing them with new thread, integrating patches of muted linen into the resplendent tapestry. "Do not hide the scars," he said. "Let them be sites of renewal." As the scholar observed, Rue did not erase the robe's past. He preserved the embroidered motifs, but he introduced neutral panels that softened the ostentation and allowed movement. The robe, once ceremonially rigid, now folded around the body with a measured generosity. The woman left with a garment that held lineage without insisting on constraint. "Repair is not negation," Rue told the scholar. "It is translation. We convert what has been worn into what can still be worn." The scholar began to apply these lessons to his study. He rewrote his schedules to allow for pauses, hours to walk the riverbank, to listen without forming judgments, to return to texts with a patience that resembled Rue's hand. Rue. He learned to mend his arguments, not by erasing counterpoints, but by integrating them into larger propositions. Where once he had sharpened his mind like a blade, he now tempered it like a needle, fine, flexible, capable of delicate work. In winter, when the frost drew filigrees on the window panes, The village organized a small gathering to celebrate the year's harvest. People wore their altered garments with a quiet pride, robes that honored ancestors and chanced new paths. The scholar spoke at the gathering not with the brittle certainty of a recent convert, but with an equanimity that invited dialogue. He read a passage, then sat in silence as others added retorts and remembrances. The cadence of the evening felt less like a performance and more like a collective weaving of thought. One night, under a waning moon, the scholar thanked Drew. "You taught me to reconcile extremes," he said. "To know when to bind and when to release. To accept that life will always require mending." Rue smiled, his face a map of careful repairs. "We are all garments," he said. "Some of us bear ornate patterns, others plainness. Some of us fray at the edges. But each seam, each patch, tells how we have endured. To tailor is to witness endurance. Years accumulated like folded robes on a shelf." The scholar took the river road to distant towns and returned with new phrases, new quarrels, new songs. He never became an oracle. Instead, he became an interlocutor, one who knew the art of holding complexity without collapsing into didacticism. The tailor continued his work, his fingers as steady as ever, mending the quotidian and the ceremonial alike. When the scholar later taught at an academy, he spoke of temperance not as abstinence, but as skillful integration. He advised students to be assiduous in their labor and gentle in their judgments. He told them the parable of the tailor who stitched cold to warmth, past to present, and, through that humble labor, taught a village how to live with dignity. The river kept its course. Seasons altered the colors of the hills and the cloth in Rue's shop, but the practice of tempering endured. People came with patched robes and tangled lives. They left carrying a small wisdom, that life need not be perfected to be whole, that seams are not failures but opportunities, and that the patient hand can make of disparate threads a garment fit for carrying on. Vocabulary: temperance. Moderation or self-restraint in action or expression. He practiced temperance in speech, preferring measured remarks to impulsive praise. Assiduous. Showing great care, attention, and effort. Her assiduous notes became the foundation of a rigorous argument. Equanimity. Mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. He faced the tribunal with equanimity, refusing to be hurried by outrage. Meticulous. Extremely careful and precise about details. The manuscript's margins were annotated with meticulous commentary. Resplendent. Shining brilliantly. Richly colorful or sumptuous. The festival hall was resplendent with lanterns and embroidered banners. Palimpsest. A manuscript or document that bears traces of earlier writing beneath new text. Something reused or altered, but still bearing visible traces of its earlier form. Her memoir read like a palimpsest, layers of memory visible beneath fresh reflections. Suture. To join or stitch together, used metaphorically for repair. He sutured the arguments of competing scholars into a single coherent thesis. Cadence. A modulation or inflection of the voice. Rhythmic flow of language. The teacher's cadence made even abstruse passages seem deliberate and clear. Austere. Severe or strict in manner, attitude, or appearance. Simple and unadorned. The monk's austere quarters were nevertheless suffused with a careful order. Quotidian. Ordinary or everyday, especially mundane. He found philosophy not only in grand epics, but in quotidian tasks like sweeping and mending. Convivial. Friendly, lively, and enjoyable. Fond of feasting and sociality. The village's convivial supper lasted until candles guttered and everyone smiled. Temper. To moderate or mitigate. To bring to a desired consistency by blending or conditioning. She tempered her criticism with genuine acknowledgement of effort.